Hey yo, what it do, crew? It's your boy Elijah X. I love how every video I'm readjusting this mic on the fly. it's just a thing now. But today we're doing something a little bit different. We're gonna listen to an excerpt from the book by Mark R. Levin. He's an American broadcast news analyst, a columnist, a lawyer, political commentator, radio personality, and of course, a writer. But I bring this up because we're in some turbulent times, and there might be people on the left-hand side of your family, friends, or your social groups not exactly sure how Trump won in such a decisive manner, in such an overwhelming mandate that's effectively demonstrative of 86% of the country's makeup. They can be completely baffled, and that is in large part due to where they're receiving their information, and that happens to be from the mainstream media, of course. Now, I've been telling folks for a while that the Democrats and that the celebrities and, the broadcast networks are lock in step, hand in hand, and I didn't know necessarily why that is until I listened to this here book. So whether you get a chance to read this or listen to it through some kind of streaming service, this is why it makes a difference to ingest knowledge on your own and do your own research and actually go out there and seek the knowledge. Don't just let it be given to you. But I'm going to stop talking because this is going to tell you exactly why things are going the way they currently are and why it's working, or it was.
Chapter 4. Language Control and Thought Control. Dr. Just A.M. Merleau, probably unknown to most Americans but well-known in psychiatric circles, was a practicing psychiatrist for over 40 years. He did staff psychiatric work in Holland and worked as a general practitioner until 1942 under Nazi occupation, when he assumed the name Just to fool the occupying forces, and in 1942 fled to England after barely eluding death at the hands of the Germans. He was chief of the psychological department of the Dutch army in exile in England. Merleau specialized in the area of thought control techniques used by totalitarian regimes. In his book Delusion and Mass Delusion, Merleau explains that totalitarian or dictatorial thinking is a remnant of archaic times. Objective verification of ideas is rejected since no reality beyond the dictatorial opinion exists. The deviant point of view is considered dangerous for the weak. Free thought is experienced as a thwarting, hostile force. The critical word, the deviating attitude, the nonconformism of one man threatens the clan. The individual is only permitted to think with the tribe. Archaic thinking follows what we might call an imperialistic strategy. It lulls people to sleep. It resists their consciousness and critical confrontation. It suppresses all individual creativity. Totalitarian thinking is identifying thinking. It takes account only of totalities and never of parts. Specific and particular forms have no value. Only the recurrent and expected is accepted. Man remains one with his people, his land, his race. Human evolution, however, breaks the bond between man and his world and places him in opposition to it. If we are to be honest with ourselves, this is where our culture is heading or is already parked. For example, it is difficult to forget this exchange between Republican Tennessee Senator Marsha Blackburn and Supreme Court nominee Ketanji Brown Jackson. Can you define the word woman? Can I provide a definition? Jackson responded. No, I can't, Jackson declared before adding, I'm not a biologist. Thus, the first black woman ever nominated to serve on the Supreme Court and celebrated as such by Joe Biden, the Democrat Party, and the media, and who now serves on the court, refused to define the word woman, even though she obviously knew the answer. But what explains such nonsense? Jackson, Biden, and the same Democrats who refuse to use the word woman in certain contexts have no problem using the word when it comes to celebrating International Women's Day, Women's History Month, the Violence Against Women Act, a woman's right to choose, or, of course, the first black woman to serve on the Supreme Court. Moreover, not one Senate Democrat or prominent Democrat anywhere found Jackson's testimony embarrassing, troubling, or disqualifying. On the contrary, she was defended. As Associate Professor Magna Stroinska at McMaster University in Hamilton, Canada, explains in her essay, Language and Totalitarian Regimes, totalitarianism promotes persuasion by means of altering people's perception of reality. She also explains that communist regimes used the means of propaganda and mass deception based on a fiction. In other words, language is weaponized to serve the purposes of a political party, movement, ideology, and/or regime. In this, the Marxists are not alone. Stroinska notes that, in practice, only a few people can be persuaded that black is white, but many learn to say that they do see things in prescribed colors and to call them by prescribed names. For example, not long ago, Republican Senator Marco Rubio introduced an amendment to a bill that would have clarified for the purposes of maternal and infant-related program resources that only women can be pregnant. It was defeated by the Senate Democrats. Or take the word socialist. Stroinska explains that while the word socialist became suspect, social lingers on. It became a fixed prefix to words such as justice, institution, policy, democracy, or solidarity, as if there were any instances of justice or democracy that were happening in a vacuum.
I'm a cease it at that moment, but I can already sense whiffs of how the totalitarian aspect applies to our government. Think about the transgenderism thing that is going on currently. How even though everybody knows something's black, that they're willing to call it white, and by a name that is given communally, even though we know objectively it's not correct. The language use and rhetoric behind the Democrat Party is very underhanded, and it seems like it's not intended sometimes, but they know precisely what they're doing. They're tuning the mind of their party to take away their individualities, essentially. They're herd mentalitying everyone into these categories, and I mean, they're pretty much self-segregating themselves at this point. The thing, though, is that the left always cannibalizes its own, so there is no win in this scenario one way or the other. But once again, give this book a look, man. There's so much information in here also about the education system and the teachers unions and Disney's role in indoctrinating the youth and passing along woke message throughout media. There's also stuff about once again, the media about that in this book. So The Democrat Party Hates America by Mark R. Levin. Check it out. Be blessed and stay so.